A Karen substitute teacher belittled me in front of my classmates for having dyslexia and refused to believe it's a real condition after trying to force me to read in front of the class, so I got her ass fired. Here's what happened. I'm a 14-year-old high school student and I've had dyslexia my whole life. Growing up, reading was always a struggle for me. I would get so frustrated when I couldn't keep up with my classmates and my teachers would get mad at me for not understanding the material. But my parents were always supportive and helped me find ways to work around my condition. So I'm in high school now and I've had a pretty good experience so far. I have a regular biology teacher who is super understanding and always helps me out when I need it. But today, I had a sub and let me tell you, it was the worst experience of my life. The sub's name was, let's just call her Karen. She was this 65-year-old snobby woman who seemed to think that dyslexia was fake. We were all reading from the textbook and it eventually became my turn. I told her that I can't read and she just looked at me like I was trying to pull a fast one on her. I tried to explain to her that I have dyslexia and it's a real condition, but she just wouldn't listen. What do you mean you can't read? You're just trying to get out of reading, Karen said with a smirk on her face. I tried to explain to her, no, I have dyslexia and it makes reading difficult for me. Dyslexia? That's just an excuse. I don't believe in that. She responded with a roll of her eyes. It's not an excuse, it's a real condition. I have a learning disability, I replied, trying to stay calm. Oh, please. Everyone has some sort of learning disability these days. It's just an excuse not to try, Karen said with a dismissive wave of her hand. I could feel my face getting red with anger. It's not an excuse, it's something I have to deal with every day, and you're not helping by making fun of me and not accommodating, I retorted. I'm not making fun of you, I'm just saying that you're not trying hard enough, Karen replied, her tone condescending. I am trying, but it's hard for me because of my dyslexia, I argued. Well, maybe if you tried harder, you wouldn't have this so-called dyslexia, Karen said with a sneer. I couldn't take it anymore. You don't know what you're talking about. Dyslexia is a real condition and you're being incredibly fucking rude, I exclaimed. My classmates were staring at us now, some of them looking uncomfortable, but Karen just laughed. Oh please, you're just a kid. What do you know about anything? You're just making excuses, and don't use that language in class or I'll put you in detention. Have some respect, she said with a chuckle. I could feel my anger boiling over. I'm not making excuses. I'm telling you that I have a real condition, bitch, I shouted. At this point, my friend stands up for me and tries to defend me, but Karen just starts yelling at him too. What do you know? You're just a child. Stop being so oblivious. Most of these so-called conditions are fake, she sneered. I know that dyslexia is a real condition, and you're being really insensitive, my friend replied, trying to stand up for me. I'm not insensitive. I'm just saying he's making excuses, Karen retorted. After class is over, I decide to go to the principal and file a formal complaint, but he just ignores me and brushes me off. Feeling defeated, I went home and shared the story with my mother. She was horrified and couldn't believe what had happened. She reaffirmed me by saying that the teacher should have never treated me like that. Together, we decided to come up with a plan to get Karen fired. My mother suggested that we approach the principal again and demand that something be done, but I was hesitant. He didn't even listen to me the first time. Why would he listen now? So, the next day we went to the school together and approached the principal, but he just ignored our complaints and brushed us off again. My mother was furious. This is unacceptable. My son was humiliated in front of his entire class and you're just going to sweep it under the rug? She exclaimed. But the principal just looked at us with a blank expression. I'll look into it, but I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, he said dismissively. My mother couldn't take that as an answer, so she decided to take matters into her own hands. She called the head of education in the state and reported Karen. And you know what? It worked. A few weeks later, Karen got fired and we even got a small settlement. Her teaching license was also revoked, and now she can't work as a teacher again. So that's my revenge. What should I have done differently? Wow. It seems like Karen is a real piece of work. I can't even believe the way she treated the OP. Like, seriously, who does she think she is? Dyslexia is a real condition and she has no right to belittle or dismiss it. I mean, the way she assumed OP was trying to pull a fast one on her, that's just cruel. And then saying dyslexia is just an excuse? Like, come on. What kind of ignorance is that? As for what the OP should have done differently, I don't think there's much he could have done. He tried to explain his condition to Karen, but she just wouldn't listen. He also stood up for himself and defended his condition, but Karen just kept on belittling him. Maybe he could have gone to the principal sooner and filed a formal complaint, but it's not fair for him to have to do that. It's Karen's responsibility as a teacher to understand and support her students' learning disabilities. Bottom line, Karen's actions were unacceptable and the OP should not have had to put up with that kind of treatment. My crazy entitled teacher cuts the tube of my insulin pump with medicine I require to live, right in the middle of class, thinking that I'm listening to music through headphones that I was hiding. Here's what happened. This happened when I was in middle school, back in the days of wired headphones, so about 2011 or something. I've been a type 1 diabetic since I was about 4 years old, and I use a continuous glucose monitor and an insulin pump. I had an IEP, so all my teachers were told about it, and that I would need my insulin pump in class. That it might make noise and I might have to pull it out of my pocket and mess with it if I needed insulin, or I might need to drink a juice pouch, and I was able to do so at my discretion. We had one teacher who was a complete hard-ass for no reason. She was notorious for making kids cry during presentations. She even told one girl who wanted to be a doctor to find a cure for cancer, because her little sister had childhood cancer, that she would need to actually be smart to do that while chuckling to herself. Let a kid dream, man. We were like 12 years old. As you can imagine, she was also at war with technology. And on a side note, these days, I use my phone to check my glucose and give myself an insulin bolus. I can't imagine being a kid today and dealing with a teacher like that when the lines are blurred and your smartphone actually is a life-saving medical device. But anyway, if you're not familiar with insulin pumps, the kind I use has a little tube that connects the pump which has the insulin to my body which needs the insulin. The teacher also liked to be weirdly obtuse about things. Instead of being like other teachers and simply saying something like, "No cell phones in class, put it on my desk," which would allow me to remind them it's an insulin pump, and they'd usually say something like, "That's right, my bad." She would instead try to talk abstractly about what she wanted to happen while walking around the room. So this particular day, she kept alluding to students listening to music in class. That you should be careful what you do because she can see it. That us kids think we're so sneaky but the adults know what we're up to. I obviously wasn't listening to music, so I figured she'd seen someone with headphones in the room. And the next thing I know, she had snuck up behind me with scissors. It took me a good moment to realize what exactly had happened because I was astonished. I was used to teachers thinking I had a cell phone or getting upset about my pump beeping during an exam, but no one had ever touched it before, much less cut my life-sustaining tube. I was actually sitting with my mouth agape and she turned to me, now that she was at the front of the class again, and said something along the lines of, "Mr. Wonderly, care to share what tunes are more important than listening to class?" I'd at this point put together that she thought I was listening to music. She thought she cut my headphone wires. I replied, "Just the sound of my thoughts while I've still got any, since that was my insulin pump." She had let me go to my locker to get my cell phone to call my mom to bring me a new infusion set. My parents insisted no cell phones until high school, but my mom was also scared of me being T1D and too dyslexic to remember a phone number and wanted me to easily be able to call her, so she got me a $15 Walmart phone and put minutes on it. And now I feel old. Then I just waited in the front office for her. She worked from home and drove like a bat out of hell. She was so angry. I don't ever want to see her that angry again in my life. It took 10 years off of me and I wasn't even in trouble. The teacher had apologized to me, and all the teachers got some more disability accommodation training or something. Kinda anticlimactic end, but a friend thought it was entertaining and that I should share. The writer provides an update and states, "Yes, she knew I had a pump. I had an IEP and my teachers were given the information they needed to know about my diabetes. Even still, a lot of non-diabetics just don't get it, or they forget. It would happen a lot and teachers would ask for my phone if they saw me messing with it under the desk. Really, I was going through a thing and embarrassed about being diabetic, so I would often try to hide it, so I get how they thought I had a phone. But a simple reminder it's a pump was enough for every other teacher. Yes, she did get really close to me. I was facing the front of the room to look at the projection screen and to take notes. She snuck up behind me from the back of the room where she was lecturing at us from and reached her arm down towards me with the scissors. I didn't notice her doing that. Kids used to keep their iPod or whatever in their pocket and then run their headphones up under their shirt. It sometimes left a little bit of the wire peeking out from their pocket to get to their shirt. That's where she cupped the pump, was down at my waist. In terms of her apology, it wasn't too bad. We had a meeting with her, the principal, assistant principal, and a lady from the special education office, plus me and my parents. She said she was sorry for her actions and that she shouldn't have treated me that way, and she hopes I don't grow up to expect people to act like that towards me. She forgot I had a pump, but I didn't feel like she was making an excuse. She was saying she should have been more mindful and it was her fault and that I did nothing wrong. She also said I was brave and calm in the face of adversity, stuff like that. And then she apologized to my mom and dad for frightening them for any costs. She offered to pay for it, but they declined. They wanted all the teachers to get more education about kids with diabetes, and the school had like a nurse diabetes educator or someone come in to talk to the teachers. No, my parents didn't sue her or the school. No, she wasn't fired. Yes, I still had to be in her class. And yes, I did have extra supplies kept in the nurse's office, but I also just really wanted my mom in that moment because I was a kid. This was a tiny school and did a lot of backwards things. They mishandled my learning disability as well. And one year, one of my teachers was surprised my dad has mild cerebral palsy and thought it must be so tough for me having to deal with that, and would talk to him like he was 5 during student-teacher conferences. He's an engineer. Also, when my mom showed up, I was sitting in the office waiting for her. I think it took her like 15 minutes to get there post-phone call. She asked me if I was okay and checked out the damage that was done. I could tell she was mad, not with me obviously. She walked straight to the receptionist and just asked where the teacher was, and they phoned the classroom and had my teacher come to the office. The principal came out. My mom ripped her a new one, but she didn't yell. though I honestly think that made it more terrifying that she was very collected. I don't remember word for word, but basically she said that removing my insulin pump was a violation of my IEP, not to mention that it is a medical device and an extension of my body which is keeping me alive, and that she would have the audacity to damage life-saving medical equipment was reckless and criminal. That type 1 diabetes is no joke and takes lives, that she should count herself lucky she didn't damage the pump itself, and she'd let her know how expensive they are and everything they had to do to get me one. She's had years of practice having to take food into places they don't let you take outside food, or in the airport that I can't take my pump through scanners, etc. She was very practiced at putting the fear of God into people, but in a way they can't turn it on her and say she's being disruptive. Then she took me home for the rest of the day. Wow, this woman is just insane. Let's say, even if you were listening to music, what gives her the right to cut the headphone wires? Sounds like she should not have been teaching. This story just baffles me. Anyways, subscribe to You're the Jerk. Otherwise, you're the jerk.